The Sports Renegades podcast on SportsTownChicago.com. Welcome into the Sports Renegades here on SportsTownChicago.com. I'm Ryan Stuprich.
And I'm Ryan Risky.
And today we're going to start off the show talking about the Cubs and also Jason Heyward. As he's been struggling a little bit lately, he struck out this afternoon in a tough situation where he had a chance to possibly give the Cubs the lead in the ninth inning. He ended up striking out. The Cubs right now, they lost 2 of 3 to Milwaukee in Miller Park. But now they look ahead. They're flying to San Francisco as we speak, and then they'll be in St. Louis. So 2 big series coming up for the Cubs, and it would be great for them to win both of those.
It would be, and I mean, people are overreacting to this Cubs loss. They're 28-11. They have 4 more wins than the next best team in the MLB.
Yep.
And they just ran into some good pitching. And on to Heyward. I mean, when he struck out, Cubs Twitter just blew up. People are just hate him now. They're thinking he's an awful signing, and these people just don't really understand what they're talking about. I mean, statistically, Heyward has always struggled the first couple months of the season, and they got it going. You're also throwing in he's signed with a new team, signed a big contract, and he also hurt his wrist in the first week of the season, which that really affects your hitting, particularly your power stroke. And if you kind of look deeper into Heyward's numbers this year, his average is down to 225 after an 0 for 5 strikeout game. He hit his first home run a couple days ago, which, I mean, I think that's what he needed to get his season going offensively. He has 5 doubles, so only 6 extra base hits. Except I think that really the important key here is in 137 at-bats, he's only struck out 30 times, and then he also has 20 walks. So despite the 225 average, his on-base percentage is .335.
Right, and you look at how fast Anthony Rizzo got back on track. His batting average went up 100 points in not even a month. He was batting, I think, 163, and it went all the way up to 265 at the beginning of that series against Milwaukee. So, I mean, there's still tons of time left, obviously. And we were looking at his splits, and career-wise for Jason Heyward, in April he hits okay. May is actually his worst month, so there's obviously no reason to panic with Heyward. And June he gets a little better. It's warmer out, the wind's blowing out at Wrigley. Maybe he'll be hitting a lot better. July he's still pretty good. August is his best month career-wise. I was looking at his stats earlier, and August is definitely his best month. September, he tails off a little bit, and then, of course, we know how good he is in the postseason. He hasn't had that many opportunities, of course, to be in the postseason, but he's, kind of labeled as a clutch hitter, and we saw that a little earlier this year, in that home opener against the Reds. He had a clutch 2 RBI hit before Addison hit that game-winning home run.
Yeah, and Russell has been great in those opportunities as well, especially late in games with runners on. He's always coming through. And, I mean, it's not like Heyward is striking out every at-bat. I know he hasn't been making some great contact. He's made a lot of weak outs, except he's still being Heyward. He's playing elite defense in right field. He's saved plenty of runs. That limits your pitcher's pitch count. And, I mean, he's on pace to walk 80 times. And once he gets that average up a little bit, that on-base percentage will be around the 350 mark. And that's really kind of like a kind of a golden mark you look at to determine. At least I look at it that way. 350. If you're because if you're hitting 280, if your on base percentage is 350, that's terrific.
Yeah,
and
I agree.
And his on base percentage is over 100 points higher than his batting average. So I mean, once he gets the average up and he starts hitting, that on base percentage will skyrocket.
I heard something. I think Len and JD were talking about it. I think this was Monday's game in Milwaukee. They were talking about this on TV. He has a certain mechanic that John Maley, the hitting coach, is trying to fix, and I guess Atlanta really screwed him up with this, where he puts his hands back and then forward before he swings. I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it has something to do with his hands, the way that he cocks back before he swings, and Atlanta, kind of ruined him with it, and I guess he's admitted to it. Although he hit well with St. Louis last year, he still had this issue, and so the Cubs are trying to fix this issue for him, and he wants it to be fixed. So I think later on in the season, you'll definitely start to see him hitting for that reason too.
That's another very good point, because that's all he's with a new hitting coach. He's trying to fix a mechanical issue, and right there, I mean, it's going to take time to get adjusted. And also, with that split second that he's moving his hands back and forward, that's a split second he could have been swinging the bat. And with how hard guys are throwing now, you can't afford that anymore. You need all the time you can get. And then when you're doing that, he's stepping forward, and then he doesn't have his weight back.
Right, and I of course, it's tough for Cubs fans because, right before this series in Milwaukee, the Cubs took 2 or 3 from the Pirates, and they continue to beat up on the Pirates. And if you're beating up on those good teams in your division, like Pittsburgh and like St. Louis, you'll be in really good shape. And that, of course, was nice. And, they almost won that game last Sunday, but they ended up losing 2-1, I think was the final score. But they have been playing well against good teams, and they've been showing up for those key games, and they haven't really lost a game to a good team, in dramatic fashion, really. So that's always a good sign. And, I mean, as far as this Milwaukee series is concerned, they just ran into good pitching. Milwaukee has a couple good young pitchers. Of course, that Chase Anderson guy had a no-hitter going into the 8th inning, which was a little unbelievable. But
it was. I mean, except that on that game, the Cubs were squaring the ball up. They were just hitting it right at the Brewers fielders. I mean,
right.
Kirk Neuenhuis made a great catch on Chris Bryant.
Yeah, in that first inning. I think that probably would have been a home run. I know there's been a lot of discussion, would have been a home run or a double off the wall. I think that would have been a home run. So I think Neuenhuis robbed Chris Bryant of a home run.
And then Bryant hit a home run in the 9th inning.
Right, and then he hit one anyway right after Jason Heyward hit his first. So yeah, there's also talk about, well, they should move Jason Heyward out of the 2 spot in the lineup. I don't think that's a good idea, just because of what you're paying him, and you've seen what kind of a hitter he can be. He's the perfect number 2 hitter, really. So. I think it's perfect for him to hit right after Fowler.
Right. I mean, eventually they might move him down a little bit. Except right now, one of the reasons you wouldn't move him is because everyone else in their current spot is just destroying the ball. I mean, You don't want to move anyone out of their routine.
Especially Zobrist.
Yeah, you don't want to move Zobrist, who's been in a situation to drive in runs, get on bases, set up runs, and move him to the number 2 spot. I mean, it's just you don't want to... You don't want to mess with what's working. And also in that Milwaukee series, that 13-inning game last night, that's literally the kind of game that good teams win on just their awful, horrible night, and that's also the kind of game that bad teams lose.
Right, absolutely. And, I mean, we've seen the Cubs lose games like that before a couple of years ago where, sometimes they would compete, go into extras, and then lose. I think that whole time I was expecting the Cubs to lose just because that's sort of a Cubs thing, but you have to remember that this is the 2016 Cubs. They're 28-11. They're off to they were off to a historic start, as far back as last week. So they really, have everything going, and now you have to look forward to San Francisco to start off this. I mean, this is really the first away game because there's tons of Cubs fans that go up to Milwaukee.
Were there Brewers fans at any of those games?
I don't know. I definitely, especially the 13-inning game last night.
All those Cubs fans that were still there in that 13th inning was unbelievable.
There was definitely it was almost an all Cubs fan base, especially late at night there at the end of that game, because even if you live in Chicago, that's still a 2-hour drive. It's only an hour if you're in the north suburbs, but that is just interesting. But now the real fun begins as Jake Arrieta pitches tomorrow in San Francisco. He'll look to shut them down as they've been hot of late too.
They have, and I mean, with the Brewers series, I mean, as you said, the last 3 years ago, the Cubs were losing that kind of game where when the bases were loaded and Wood on the mound, I thought they were going to lose. I mean,
yes, I did too.
I mean, they didn't have anyone in the bullpen they could have just brought in, and then Wood gets out of it. I mean, a shallow pop up to center, the infield fly, And then the 2 outs, bases loaded, a hit has to score a run, and then the Cubs have all the momentum back. And then next inning, Travis Wood walks with the bases loaded to give the Cubs a 2-1 lead. And that's really how you write those kind of games. The relief pitcher walks with the bases loaded to give his team the lead.
Yeah, it's unbelievable the way that played out. It was a very exciting game, except for not a whole lot of offense, but it was entertaining, especially in the extra innings. So yeah, the Cubs are going to have Jake Arrieta and John Lester both pitching in San Francisco, so that'll help a little bit. They got their 2 best pitchers on the mound for those games.
Which, realistically, you'll take losing 2 of 3 to the Brewers having Arrieta and Lester not pitch that series, and then having them pitch against the Giants and probably win at least one of those games.
Yeah, hopefully. And then, of course, they go to St. Louis again, which is kind of weird because they were just in St. Louis not even a month ago. And now they go back to St. Louis. They're not going to have Arrieta in that series, it looks like. But
is that a 2-game series only?
I think it's 3. So maybe he pitched the last game.
He would pitch the last game if he's scheduled to pitch tomorrow.
Yeah, either way, it's going to be tough. But it's nice to start off the San Francisco series with the 2 best pitchers,
especially when San Francisco's got Bumgarner going on Sunday Night Baseball.
Yeah, that's going to be an exciting game. It's always nice that the Cubs, now that they're consistently good, it's nice that they're on national TV a lot more, because they hadn't been on national TV at all really since like 2008, 2009. So
right, and I was when the Cubs were announcing their Sunday times for the month of June, I'm going on the 5th with my cousin, and I was really hoping that Sunday game against June 5th against the Diamondbacks would have been moved to the primetime game. Yeah. And they announced that it was.
I'm sure the Yankees are playing. Don't worry, I'm sure the Yankees are playing. That is unbelievable, the way that the Yankees. I think it was they had the Sunday night game against the Red Sox, which obviously will always be nationally televised. But then they had a series against the Royals the following week. The Tuesday night game was on MLB Network. The Wednesday afternoon game was on MLB Network. I'm like, what is going on here? There's got to be some better games.
I think it was either 2 consecutive weeks or 2 of 3 games in a 3-week span. They played the Red Sox on Sunday Night Baseball.
Yeah, and that Cubs Nationals game that you were at, that could have been easily flexed to a Sunday night Mother's Day game.
That absolutely should have been flexed,
but it was not. And they had Yankees Red Sox, I think was that. That's sort of.
I think that was either Yankees Red Sox or Red Sox Astros. I know the Red Sox and Astros had a Sunday night game also.
It might have been Red Sox Astros. Either way, that's sort of where the Cubs stand right now. They're still in good shape. They got 4 or 5 game lead over the Pirates, maybe even more than that at this point, because the Pirates are struggling. I know they just lost to Atlanta last night, which is never a good sign. The Cubs now look forward to San Francisco and St. Louis, and then they'll be back home against the Phillies next Friday.
We all remember what happened last time the Phillies came to town.
I have a feeling they're not going to get swept by the Phillies.
The thing is, though, the Phillies
and no more Cole Hamels.
The Phillies are a really surprisingly good team this year. They have a winning record. And
I'm sure they'll tail
roster, off. They don't really have that many great players. Odubel Herrera's hitting .330. Franco's hitting good in the middle of the lineup. Vincent Velasquez has been great in the rotation. Their rotation's been good. Their bullpen hasn't been blowing games.
Yeah.
They're getting just enough run support, so.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes. There's no need to panic for all the Cubs fans out there. There's no need to panic now, and don't worry about Heyward. He'll start hitting very shortly. We've got a feeling he'll be very clutch, especially come June. So stick around to Sports Renegades here on SportsTownChicago.com. The Sports Renegades podcast on SportsTownChicago.com.